The air in our living room felt thick, charged with a tension I hadn't fully grasped until that moment. Claire stood across from me, her arms crossed, her eyes cold and unyielding. The argument had started innocently enough, a discussion about my parents' old house, the one they'd left me when they passed. I wanted to honor their memory, maybe turn it into something meaningful like a home for foster kids. Claire, however, had other ideas. She wanted to sell it, split the profits with her sister Leela, who'd been circling our lives like a vulture ever since my parents' will was read. I'd resisted, not because of the money, but because that house held every memory of my childhood. Summers on the porch, my dad's laughter, my mom's garden. It wasn't just a property. It was a piece of my soul. But Claire wasn't listening. Her voice rose, sharp and venomous, until she screamed, "If you won't agree, then get out. I'm done with you." The words hit me like a physical blow. I stood there, stunned, as she pointed to the door, her face twisted with a rage I'd never seen before. This wasn't the woman I'd married 10 years ago, the one who'd laughed with me over late-night pizza and promised we'd face the world together. This was a stranger, and the realization carved a hollow space in my chest. I didn't fight back. I couldn't. My throat tightened, and without another word, I grabbed my keys, my wallet, and walked out into the night. The drive was a blur. I ended up at a roadside motel, the kind with flickering neon signs and threadbare carpets. The room smelled of stale smoke and regret, but it was quiet, and that was enough. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the peeling wallpaper, replaying the fight in my head. How had we gotten here? I thought of the past few years, Claire's late nights working, her sudden disinterest in our shared routines, the way she'd bristle when I asked about her day. I'd chalked it up to stress, to the grind of life, but now, in the sterile silence of that motel room, the truth began to crystallize. She hadn't just pulled away, she'd been building a life without me, one where I was no longer welcome. Sleep didn't come that night. Instead, I thought about the house, about Claire's insistence on selling it. It wasn't just about the money, I realized. There was something deeper, something calculated. I remembered the way Leela had been at our house more often lately, whispering with Claire in the kitchen, their voices dropping when I entered the room. I thought of the phone calls Claire would take in the other room, her laughter muffled but unmistakable. And then there was the time I'd found a man's scarf in our car, one she'd dismissed as Leela's boyfriend's. I hadn't pressed her then, but now those moments stitched together into a tapestry of betrayal. Claire wasn't just after the house. She was rewriting our life, and I was no longer part of the story. The next morning, I drove to my parents' house. It sat on a quiet street, the paint faded but the bones still strong. I walked through the empty rooms, the hardwood creaking under my feet. Memories flooded back. My dad teaching me to fix a bike in the garage, my mom humming as she baked in the kitchen. Standing there, I felt a surge of clarity. This house wasn't Claire's to take. It wasn't Leela's either. It was mine, and it deserved a future that honored my parents' legacy. I spent the day making calls, reaching out to a lawyer I knew from college. By evening, I had a plan. I'd put the house in a trust, one that would turn it into a safe haven for foster children. It would be a place of love and stability. Everything Claire's actions were dismantling in my life. Days later, Claire and Leela showed up at the house. I told them I'd hand over the keys, let them think they'd won. They arrived together, Leela's smirk as sharp as Claire's impatience. "Let's get this over with," Claire said, holding out her hand. I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw the woman who'd once been my partner now reduced to a stranger chasing a payout. I handed her a folder instead of the keys. "What's this?" she snapped, flipping it open. Her face froze as she read the documents. The trust, the house's new purpose, the fact that neither she nor Leela would ever touch it. Leela's mouth fell open, her eyes darting to Claire, who looked like she'd been slapped. "It's for foster kids," I said calmly. "The house will be a home for them, just like it was for me. You're not getting it." Claire's hand shook, her voice rising into a screech. "You can't do this. We had plans." But I was done listening. I walked away, leaving them standing in the driveway, their voices fading into the background. For the first time in weeks, I felt light, unburdened. The divorce was finalized a few months later. I signed the papers in a lawyer's office, Claire glaring at me from across the table. She tried to fight the trust, but my lawyer was thorough, and the house was untouchable. I moved into a small apartment, just me and a few boxes of books and clothes. At first, the solitude was heavy, but slowly it became a gift. I started running again, something I hadn't done since my 20s. I read late into the night, rediscovering authors I'd loved in college. I even began volunteering at a local community center, teaching kids how to build things just like my dad had taught me. One evening, as I sat on my balcony watching the sunset, I thought about my dad's advice. He'd always said to choose your battles wisely, that sometimes walking away was the strongest thing you could do. I'd walked away from Claire, from the house fight, from the life we'd built together, but I hadn't lost. The house was now a beacon of hope for kids who needed it, and I was finding my own peace. I pictured Claire and Leela, their plans unraveling, their betrayal exposed in the light of my decision. And I smiled not out of spite, but because I'd chosen dignity over revenge, quiet strength over chaos. For the first time in a long time I felt whole.